Captain Lee Hyun stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber and felt very small. The massive room stretched above him like a cathedral made of crystal and light. Hundreds of alien species sat in their designated seats, watching him with eyes that didn't look human at all. Some had too many eyes, some had none. He wore his dress uniform, the dark blue fabric crisp and clean. On his chest were medals from the Border Wars and the Mars Rebellion. But here, in this place, those medals meant nothing. The aliens didn't care about human conflicts. They barely cared about humans at all. Beside him, Dr. Park Minji adjusted her tablet. She was nervous too, though she hid it better than he did. Her job was to explain the science. His job was to make them listen. So far, neither of them was succeeding. "Captain Lee," High Chancellor Vorman's voice boomed through the chamber. The reptilian leader sat on the highest platform, his scales gleaming under the lights. "You have spoken for 20 minutes. The council grows tired. State your final point." Lee Hyun took a deep breath. "The mining operations near Terra Nova will disrupt the entire ecosystem. Those worlds have been human colonies for 60 years. 50,000 people live there. We're asking for a delay until... Asking. Ambassador." Kreltoth clicked his mandibles together in what Lee had learned was laughter. The insectoid's body was covered in hard, shining armor. His compound eyes reflected the light in strange ways. "Humans do not ask. Humans demand. Humans complain. You arrived in our galaxy 80 years ago, and you have done nothing but whine about territory ever since." Several council members made sounds of agreement. Lee felt his jaw tighten. Park Minji touched his arm gently, a warning. "Don't lose your temper. Not here." "We're not demanding anything," Lee said carefully. "We're warning you. Those colonies are home to families. Children. If your mining ships come too close, your species is too emotional about dirt and rocks," Vorman interrupted. "The Vex Collective has legal rights to mine in that sector. Your colonies will not be harmed. The Vex have promised this." "The Vex have promised?" Lee couldn't keep the anger from his voice now. "The same Vex who destroyed the atmosphere on Kepler 9? The same ones who..." "Kepler 9 had no registered inhabitants," Kreltoth said. "Your species had not yet filed proper territorial claims. This is not our fault. Learn galactic law before you speak in this chamber, human." Park Minji stepped forward. "If I may address the council? Our surveys show that mining operations within 50,000 kilometers of Terra Nova will..." "Enough." Vorman raised one clawed hand. "The council has heard your concerns. They are noted. The Vex Collective mining operations will proceed as scheduled. This matter is closed." Lee felt something cold settle in his stomach. "You're making a mistake. Are you threatening the council?" Foreman leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "I'm reminding you that humans have a history," Lee said quietly. "We've fought wars that killed millions, billions. We know what happens when people are pushed too far. When families are threatened, when homes are destroyed." The chamber filled with sounds that might have been laughter. Clicks, whistles, and strange musical tones that meant amusement to dozens of different species. "Oh, the humans and their violent past," Kreltoth said. "We have heard this story before. Your species killed each other with primitive weapons centuries ago. How frightening." Meanwhile, the Vex glassed 3 planets before joining the council. The Korthans consumed their own young until they evolved past it. "Every species has a bloody history, human. You are not special." Lee opened his mouth to respond, but a new voice cut through the chamber. "Perhaps we should listen." Everyone turned. In the far corner of the chamber, hidden in shadows, sat one of the Wanderers. Lee had almost forgotten they were there. The Wanderers were old, ancient even by galactic standards. They rarely spoke in council sessions. This one looked like smoke given form, its body shifting and changing as it moved. "Respected Elder," Foreman said, his voice carefully neutral. "Do you have something to add?" "Only that our records show," the Wanderer began. "Your records are 10,000 years old," Kreltoth interrupted. "Humans have been spacefaring for barely 200 years. What could your ancient records possibly..." "Tell us about them?" The Wanderer was silent for a moment, then it settled back into its seat. Nothing, perhaps. Proceed as you wish. Lee stared at the Wanderer, confused. Why had it spoken up only to retreat? But there was no time to wonder. Foreman was speaking again. Captain Lee Hyun, Dr. Park Min-ji, you are dismissed. The Council will now vote on mining operations in Sector 7. As you are not Council members, you may not be present for the vote. It was a dismissal and an insult. Lee knew it. Everyone in the chamber knew it. Park Min-ji bowed slightly, the gesture minimal but polite. Lee forced himself to do the same. Then they turned and walked toward the exit. The walk felt longer than it should have. Lee could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching them leave. When the doors finally closed behind them, he let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. That went poorly, Park Min-ji said. They're not going to listen, Lee replied. They think we're weak, emotional, foolish. Maybe we should contact Earth Command. Let them know the Council refused. Lee pulled out his communicator and sent a coded message. 3 words. Request denied. Proceed carefully. The response came back in seconds. Understood. Watching. They walked through the corridors of the station in silence. Other species passed them by, some curious, most ignoring them completely. Humans were still new to the galactic stage. Still learning. Still small. They reached their quarters an hour later. Lee collapsed into a chair and closed his eyes. Do you think the Vex will really be careful? Park Min-ji asked. Lee thought about Kreltoth's laughter, about Vorman's dismissive tone, about the way the entire council had treated their concerns like the worries of children. No, he said finally. I don't think they'll be careful at all. Park Min-ji was quiet for a moment. Then she said, What do we do? We wait. We watch, and we pray that I'm wrong. But Lee Hyun knew he wasn't wrong. He'd seen this pattern before back on Earth, back when nations ignored warnings and thought they were untouchable, back when people forgot that the quiet ones, the peaceful ones, could be pushed too far. The Vex mining fleet arrived at Terra Nova 3 days later. Their ships were massive industrial things built for tearing apart asteroids and planets. They sent a message to the colony, evacuate within 48 hours, minimal possessions only. The colony governor tried to negotiate. The Vex didn't respond. When the 48 hours ended, the Vex began their work. Their mining lasers cut into the planet's crust, sending tremors through the ground. Buildings shook, domes cracked. And, when the colonists tried to protest, when they stood in front of the mining equipment and refused to move, the Vex opened fire. 200 humans died in the first hour. Men, women, and children. Their only crime was standing on land they'd called home for 60 years. The news reached the Galactic Council 6 hours later. Foreman issued a statement calling it an unfortunate accident and promising an investigation that everyone knew would go nowhere. The news reached Earth 12 hours after that, and in the halls of human government and military bases across a dozen worlds, in the hearts of billions of people who had tried so hard to be peaceful, to be civilized, to be good members of the galactic community, something ancient and terrible began to wake up. Captain Lee Hyun heard the news in his quarters. He sat in silence for a long time, staring at the images on his screen. Bodies in the street, burning buildings, a child's toy lying in the dirt. He thought about the council's laughter, about their dismissal, about the way they'd treated human concerns like jokes. And he thought about something his grandfather had told him once back on Earth, before the old man died. A quote from an ancient war, from a military leader whose name had been lost to time. I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve. Lee picked up his communicator and sent another message to Earth Command. It was only 2 words this time. They crossed it. The testimony room was cold and silent. Choi Ji-won sat in front of the United Earth Council, her hands shaking slightly as she held a glass of water. She was 23 years old. 3 days ago, she'd been an engineer working on environmental systems at Terra Nova. Now she was one of only 800 survivors. Take your time, the council chairman said gently. Around him sat representatives from every human government. Military officers stood along the walls, their faces hard. Jiwon took a sip of water. Her throat was dry. They came just after dawn, she began. The Vex mining ships. We'd been told to evacuate, but Governor Kim said we had rights, that the Galactic Council would protect us. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. We were so stupid. You weren't stupid, Colonel Kim Taehyun said from his position by the wall. You trusted a system that claimed to be civilized. Jiwon nodded slowly. The first lasers hit the mining complex. They said they were just clearing ground. But the complex was still occupied. 47 people were working the early shift. They died instantly when the building collapsed. She paused, her eyes distant. Then people started protesting. My friend's mother organized it. About 500 colonists just standing in the main square. They weren't violent. They just stood there with signs asking the Vex to stop. What happened then? Someone asked. The Vex sent down ground troops. We'd never seen them before, not in person. They're big, as tall as 2 humans. They look like they're made of metal and chitin. They told the protesters to disperse. Nobody moved. So they... She stopped, closing her eyes. They opened fire, she whispered. No warning shots. No arrests. They just started shooting into the crowd. I was in a building nearby. I watched through a window. I watched people I'd known my whole life fall down and not get up. The room was utterly silent. My supervisor, Dr. Hong, she pulled me away from the window, told me we needed to run. We grabbed what we could and headed for the emergency shelters. But the Vex were targeting them too. Not by accident. On purpose. They knew where the shelters were. They knew where the schools were. Colonel Kim's jaw clenched. They targeted schools? Ji-won nodded, tears streaming down her face now. Youngman Elementary. 300 children. The teachers tried to get them into the basement, but the building took a direct hit. They found 12 survivors. 12 out of 300. Someone in the room cursed. Others looked away. The chairman's face had gone pale. How did you escape? He asked. Dr. Hong knew about an old maintenance tunnel. We hid there for 6 hours while the Vex swept through the colony. We could hear them above us. Hear the weapons fire. Hear people screaming. When it finally got quiet, we waited another 3 hours. Then we came out. She took another sip of water, her hands shaking harder now. The colony was gone. I mean, it was still there. The buildings and the streets. But it wasn't home anymore. It was just ruins, bodies everywhere. The Vex had moved on to the next sector. A transport ship found us 2 days later. The chairman stood up. Thank you, Miss Choi. You're very brave to share this with us. I'm not brave, Ji-won said. I'm just alive. I don't know why I'm alive when so many others aren't. After she left, the council sat in silence for a long moment. Then the chairman spoke. Recommendation? We invoke Article 7, said the ambassador from Mars Colony. Immediate withdrawal from the Galactic Council. Agreed, said the representative from Europa Station. All in favor? Every hand went up. It's unanimous then. As of this moment, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. We will govern ourselves according to our own laws. Colonel Kim stepped forward. And our military response? The chairman looked at him for a long moment. Protocol Mjolnir. Full authorization. Kim nodded once sharply. Then he turned and left the room, already pulling out his communicator. Within the hour, every human colony went dark. Communication arrays powered down. Diplomatic channels closed. Trade routes shut. To the rest of the galaxy, it was as if humanity had simply vanished. The Galactic Council issued statements demanding explanation. Ambassador Kreltoth called it childish behavior. High Chancellor Vorman threatened sanctions against human worlds. None of the messages received replies. But the Vex Collective wasn't worried. They saw humanity's silence as surrender. They expanded their mining operations, moving toward 3 more human outposts in the Outer Rim. Small colonies barely defended, easy targets. The attack on New Jeju came 2 weeks after Terra Nova. The Vex sent an even larger fleet this time, confident that humans had learned their lesson. The colony had 30,000 people, mostly farmers and agricultural scientists. They grew food for a dozen nearby human settlements. The Vex didn't bother with warnings this time. They just arrived and began landing troops. The colonists tried to resist with hunting rifles and improvised explosives, but it wasn't enough. Within 3 days, the Vex had control of the entire planet. But instead of killing the colonists, the Vex had a different plan. They needed workers for their expanded mining operations. Humans were weak individually, but they were good with their hands. Smart, trainable. So they rounded up the colonists and put them in camps. Forced labor, they called it. Temporary relocation. The Galactic Council would never hear about it, and even if they did, they wouldn't care. 30,000 humans became slaves. The news reached Earth through a smuggled transmission. A young colonist named Bei Hana had managed to hide a communicator before she was captured. Her message was brief. They took us, all of us. Please help. That message was intercepted by Sergeant Yoon Dae-hyun's intelligence unit. He was part of the Special Forces, the best soldiers humanity had. He'd been training his whole life for combat that he'd hoped would never come. Now it had. He took the message to his commander, who took it to Colonel Kim, who took it to Earth Command. The response came back in minutes. Authorization granted. Rules of engagement, none. Mission objective, total victory. Sergeant Yoon assembled his team that same day. 24 men and women, all volunteers, all veterans of various conflicts, all angry. Listen up, he said as they gathered in the briefing room. New Jeju is occupied. 30,000 civilians are being held in labor camps. The Vex think they can use our people as slaves. He pulled up a holographic map of the colony. We're going in. Fast and hard. Extraction is secondary to liberation. If we can't get everyone out, we make sure the Vex never hold them again. Clear. Clear, Sergeant. The team responded in unison. But the new Jeju operation wasn't the only thing happening. All across human space, fleets were mobilizing. Ships that had been decommissioned were being pulled out of storage. Weapons that had been locked away after the last Earth War were being loaded onto transports. Colonel Kim stood on the bridge of the battleship Indomitable, watching the fleet assemble. 300 warships, the largest military force humanity had ever gathered. And this was just the first wave. His second-in-command, Captain Nam Yuri, stood beside him. Sir, all ships report ready. We're awaiting your orders. Kim thought about Choi Ji-won's testimony, about the school with 300 children, about people standing peacefully in a square, asking only to be left alone. He thought about the Galactic Council's laughter, about their dismissal, about the way they'd treated human lives like they were worthless. Send the message to all ships, Kim said quietly. Protocol Mjolnir is in effect. Rules of engagement, no prisoners, no mercy. No quarter, Captain Nam hesitated. Sir, that's an order, Captain. The Vex wanted to see what humans are capable of when we're pushed too far. Now they'll learn. He turned to the communications officer. Open a channel to all fleet commanders. When the channel was open, Kim spoke clearly and calmly. This is Colonel Kim Tae-hyun to all units. We are not going to war to conquer. We are not fighting for territory or resources. We are fighting because they murdered our families. Because they enslaved our people. Because they thought we were too weak to fight back. He paused, letting his words sink in. They were wrong. Show them what humanity can do. Show them what happens when you wake the sleeping giant. All ships jumped to Vex space on my mark. Around him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. No cheers, no excitement, just grim determination. Mark. 300 ships vanished into faster-than-light travel. Their destination, the heart of Vex territory. Behind them, on Earth and Mars and Europa and 100 other worlds, billions of humans waited. Some prayed, some raged, some cried, but all of them remembered. Remembered Terra Nova, remembered New Jeju, remembered every time someone had dismissed them, laughed at them, treated them like children playing at civilization. The galaxy was about to learn an important lesson. The same lesson humanity had learned centuries ago, written in blood and nuclear fire across their own homeworld. Peace is not weakness. Kindness is not cowardice, and mercy is only possible when you have the strength to destroy. Humanity had tried to be peaceful. They had tried to follow the rules. They had tried to be good members of the galactic community. That time was over. Admiral Han Soo-jin stood on the bridge of the flagship Retribution and watched the Vex homeworld grow larger on the view screen. Behind her stretched 300 human warships, their weapons armed and shields raised. They had jumped into Vex space simultaneously at a dozen different locations, hitting military bases, supply depots, and command stations all at once. The Vex hadn't been ready. Nobody had been ready. Status report, Han said calmly. She was 52 years old and had spent 30 years in the military. She'd fought pirates in the asteroid belt and put down rebellions on Mars. but she'd never commanded a fleet this large, never fought a war like this. All ships in position, Admiral, her tactical officer reported. Vex defense fleet is scrambling. Estimate 70 ships incoming. 70 against 300, Han said. They should surrender. They're sending a transmission, Admiral. Asking us to stand down? Ignore it. All batteries open fire. The Retribution's main cannons roared to life. Streams of accelerated metal and energy weapons streaked across space. Other ships followed suit. The Vex defense fleet tried to form a defensive line, but they were too slow and too few. The battle lasted 18 minutes. When it was over, 63 Vex ships were destroyed. The remaining 7 tried to flee. None of them made it. Blockade positions, Han ordered. Nothing gets in or out of this system. Communications? Yes, Admiral. Broadcast this message on all frequencies. To the Vex Collective. You murdered our civilians. You enslaved our people. Surrender unconditionally within 24 hours, or we will reduce every military installation you have to dust. You have been warned. The communications officer sent the message. Han turned back to the view screen, watching the Vex homeworld. Somewhere down there, the Vex leadership was probably panicking. Good. Let them feel fear for once. Across Vex territory, similar scenes played out. Human fleets appeared without warning, struck hard, and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. Every Vex military base in the Outer Rim was destroyed in the first 3 hours. Supply lines were cut. Communication networks were jammed. At Kepler Station, the Vex military headquarters, Captain Beijiho led the attack with experimental warships equipped with new weapons. His ship carried kinetic kill vehicles. Massive chunks of metal accelerated to near light speed. When they hit with the force of nuclear weapons. Target acquired, his weapons officer said. Kepler Station is locked. Bei looked at the station on his screen. Massive, heavily defended. Home to the Vex Supreme Military Command and probably 10,000 soldiers. Destroying it would cripple the Vex war machine. It would also kill everyone on board. Sir? The weapons officer prompted. Bei thought about Terra Nova, about the school with 300 children, about New Jeju and 30,000 slaves. He thought about every human who'd been killed or captured because the Vex thought they could do whatever they wanted. Fire all weapons, he said quietly. The kinetic kill vehicles launched, 6 of them, each weighing several tons, each moving at 90% light speed. The Vex tried to shoot them down, but you can't stop that much mass moving that fast. The impacts were catastrophic. The station broke apart like a toy. Explosions bloomed across its surface. Within seconds, it was gone. 10,000 Vex dead. Bei felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, just empty. All ships returned to fleet, he ordered. Mission accomplished. But the Galactic Council was watching. As news of the human attack spread, panic rippled through civilized space. Humans, the emotional newcomers, the weak species that complained too much, were destroying the Vex Collective with terrifying efficiency. High Chancellor Vorman called an emergency session. Species from across the galaxy tuned in to watch. We must intervene, Ambassador Kreltoth said, his mandibles clicking nervously. The humans have gone mad. They're committing genocide. They're defending their people, countered a representative from the Talar Union. The Vex attacked first. That was a police action, Kreltoth insisted. A legal mining operation. Some casualties were unfortunate, but 200 dead is not unfortunate, someone interrupted. 30,000 enslaved is not police action. Maybe the humans are right to respond. The chamber erupted in argument. Some species wanted to stop the humans. Others wanted to stay out of it. A few very quietly began wondering if they should be worried about their own actions. In the shadows, the wanderer who had tried to speak before now rose and approached the center platform. Respected Elder, Vorman said, grateful for the interruption. Your wisdom would be appreciated. I tried to warn you, the wanderer said, its voice like wind through empty halls. Weeks ago. But you did not listen. Warn us about what? About humanity. The wanderer's form shifted, becoming more solid. It projected an image into the center of the chamber. Earth, blue and green and beautiful. This is their homeworld, a paradise, you might think. But look closer. The image zoomed in, showing cities. Then it shifted, showing other images. Trenches filled with mud and bodies. Mushroom clouds rising over cities. Camps with wire fences and mass graves. This species nearly destroyed itself, the wanderer said. Multiple times. They invented weapons powerful enough to make their own world uninhabitable. They built systems for killing that were industrial in scale. They fought wars that consumed entire generations. The images kept changing. More wars, more weapons, more death. And then they stopped, the Wanderer continued. Not because they became weak. Not because they lost the ability to kill. They stopped because they learned what they were capable of and were horrified by it. They built laws and institutions and cultures all designed around one principle: never again. The chamber was silent now. You looked at humans and saw them as emotional and weak. You saw their concern for civilians as foolishness, their mercy as cowardice, their restraint as inability. The Wanderer turned to face Vorman directly. You were wrong. Humans are not violent despite their emotions. They are dangerous because of them. They love deeply and so they hate deeply. They protect fiercely and so they avenge completely. You did not encounter a weak species. You encountered one that had chained itself down for the safety of everyone around them. And now? Foreman asked quietly. Now the chains are broken. On New Jeju, Sergeant Yoon Dae-hyun and his team moved through the labor camp like ghosts. They'd infiltrated at night, using terrain and technology to avoid Vex sensors. The camp held 5,000 humans, with more in camps across the planet. Teams in position, his second whispered through the comm. Ready on your order? Yoon looked through his scope at the Vex guards. 20 of them walking the perimeter. Confident, arrogant, they thought humans were beaten. Remember, Yoon said softly, prioritize getting civilians to safety. But any Vex who resists dies. No prisoners. Understood. Execute. The attack was surgical and brutal. Silenced weapons took down guards before they could raise an alarm. Explosives blew open the camp fences. Yoon's team rushed in, weapons ready, expecting resistance. Instead, they found horror. The humans in the camp were skeletal, bruised. Some had wounds that hadn't been treated. Children sat in the dirt with empty eyes. An elderly man was dead in one corner, apparently ignored by the guards for days. Yoon felt something cold and terrible settle in his chest. He'd seen combat. He'd seen death. But this was different. This was cruelty for its own sake. Get them out, he ordered. Everyone now. His team moved through the camp, helping people stand, carrying those who couldn't walk. Transport ships landed outside the fence, but then alarms started blaring. Vex reinforcements incoming, someone reported. 2 minutes out. Defensive positions, Yoon ordered. Hold them until evacuation is complete. The Vex came fast and angry, 50 soldiers in heavy armor. They saw their camp in chaos, saw humans escaping and charged. Yoon's team was outnumbered 2-1. But they had something the Vex didn't. They had rage that had been building for weeks. They had memories of Terra Nova and the faces of dead children. They had orders that said no mercy. The fight was vicious. Yoon lost 3 team members in the first minute. But his people didn't retreat. They held the line, buying time for the civilians to escape. Last transport is away, someone shouted. Fall back, Yoon ordered. Everyone to the extraction point. They ran, Vex soldiers chasing them. Another team member fell, then another. But they reached their ship and lifted off, the Vex firing uselessly at their shields. As they climbed into orbit, Yoon looked back at the planet. 4 more camps down there, 25,000 more people to rescue. Prep for the next run, he said. We're not done here. In space above New Jeju, Admiral Han received reports from all across the planet. Teams were hitting camps, freeing prisoners, killing Vex soldiers. The Vex were trying to mount a defense, but they were confused and disorganized. Admiral, her communications officer said, the Vex are broadcasting a surrender offer. What are the terms? They'll release all human prisoners if we cease military operations. Han thought about that. About the children in that school. About Choi Ji-won's testimony. About the Vex who had killed without mercy and enslaved without remorse. Denied, she said. Tell them we don't negotiate with slavers. But Admiral, we will save them, Han interrupted. By taking this planet by force. Then we'll take the next one and the next one. President Kang Min-seo sat in her office on Earth and watched reports from across the galaxy. The Vex Collective was finished. Their military destroyed. Their government begging for mercy. 3 weeks ago, they'd been laughing at human warnings. Now they were on their knees, but the war wasn't over. Not yet, Madam President, her aide said, entering the room. Commander Ojisu from Intelligence is here to see you. Send her in. Commander O entered and saluted. She was young for her rank, only 35, but her eyes looked older. She carried a data pad that she set on the president's desk. "Madam President, we have a problem." "Another one?" "We've been analyzing communications intercepts from before the war. Cross-referencing financial transactions, diplomatic cables, shipping manifests." Oh, pulled up files on the datapad. 3 other council species supported the Vex attacks. Kang felt her stomach drop. "Which ones?" "The Korthans provided weapons. The Talarian Union supplied targeting data on human colonies, and the Rigelian Confederacy offered financial backing in exchange for mining rights to human worlds after we were displaced." Kang read through the evidence. It was solid, undeniable. 3 major galactic powers had conspired to help destroy human colonies. How many people know about this? Just our intelligence division. We've kept it quiet until we knew how you wanted to proceed. Kang stood and walked to her window. Outside, she could see the lights of New Geneva, the capital of United Earth. Billions of people lived in peace here, trying to rebuild after centuries of war. She'd spent her whole political career trying to keep it that way. Now 3 alien civilizations had tried to destroy everything humans had built, and they'd thought they could get away with it. "Release the evidence," Kang said quietly. "All of it. Every document, every communication, every financial record. Let the galaxy see what their civilized council members did." "Madam President, if we do that, we'll be declaring that we won't tolerate betrayal," Kang interrupted. "The Vex were stupid enough to attack us openly. But these 3 thought they could hide behind the scenes. I want everyone to know what they did." Oh nodded. "And our military response?" "Have Admiral Han reposition our fleets. I want warships in orbit around the Korthan homeworld, Talarian space stations, and Rigelian trade routes. Not attacking, just present. Let them sweat." "Yes, Madam President." After O left, Kang sat back down and put her head in her hands. She'd never wanted this. Never wanted to be a war president. But her species had been attacked, and now she had to see it through. Her communicator buzzed. "Madam President, you have an incoming request for communication. From the Wanderer representative to the Galactic Council." "Put it through." The screen lit up with the Wanderer's shifting form. "President Kang, thank you for taking my call. What do you want?" "To share something with you. Something my people have kept in our archives for a very long time." The screen split, showing ancient documents. Images of Earth from thousands of years ago, videos of human wars, records of nuclear weapons and chemical attacks, and horrors beyond counting. "We've been watching your species for a long time," the Wanderer said. "Since before you had spaceflight. Since before you had computers. We watched you nearly destroy yourselves multiple times. We watched you create weapons that could end all life on your planet, and then we watched you choose not to use them." Kang stared at the images. "Why didn't you tell the Council this?" "I tried, but they didn't want to listen. They saw humans as weak because you avoided violence when possible. They didn't understand that avoiding violence and being incapable of violence are very different things. And now they're terrified. The Vex are broken. 3 other species are hiding evidence of their crimes. The Council is in chaos. Everyone is asking the same question." "What question?" "What do the humans want?" Kang was quiet for a moment. "What we've always wanted. To be left alone, to protect our people, to live in peace. And when your people were attacked, when they were enslaved, then we reminded the galaxy why peace is a choice we make, not a weakness we suffer from." The Wanderer made a sound that might have been approval. "There's something else you should know. The Council is debating whether to send forces against you. Some species think that if they combine their militaries, they can stop humanity before you become a threat to everyone. We're not a threat to everyone. Only to those who attack us. I believe you. But not everyone does. I'm sending you the Council's military positions and fleet deployments. Everything we have in our databases. Use it as you see fit." The data began transferring to Kang's system. Millions of files. Complete intelligence on every major military in the galaxy. "Why are you helping us?" Kang asked. "Because we're old, President Kang. Very old. We've seen thousands of species rise and fall. We've watched empires expand and collapse. And in all that time we've learned one truth. The most dangerous species are not the ones who love war. They're the ones who understand it well enough to fear it." The Wanderer's form began to fade. "Your species spent centuries learning that lesson, learning what you're capable of and being horrified by it. That horror, that understanding is what makes you different. Don't lose it even in victory. Then the connection ended. Kang sat alone in her office for a long time, thinking. Then she called for Ambassador Song Junho. He'd been humanity's representative to the Galactic Council before the war. Now she needed him again. You want me to go back? Song asked when he arrived. After everything they did? I want you to deliver our terms for peace, Kang said. The war with the Vex is over, but the galaxy needs to understand that humanity has changed. We tried to play by their rules. We tried to be peaceful and diplomatic. They responded by killing our civilians and enslaving our people. What are the terms? Kang pulled up a document she'd been working on. First, full reparations. The Vex, the Korthans, the Talarians, and the Regelians will compensate every family that lost someone, every colony that was damaged, every person who was enslaved. They'll never agree to that. It would bankrupt them. Then they should have thought of that before attacking us. Second, war crimes trials. Everyone who gave orders to target civilians or establish slave camps. They'll face justice in human courts. The Council will say that violates their sovereignty. They violated ours when they murdered our children. Third, permanent human representation on the Council Security Committee with veto power over any military action. Song whistled low. You're asking for a lot. I'm asking for what we should have had from the beginning. Respect, protection, the basic assumption that human lives matter as much as anyone else's. And if they refuse? Kang looked at him steadily. Then we continue what we started. We've proven we can defeat the Vex. We have intelligence on every other military in the galaxy, and we have weapons they've never seen before. If they want war, we'll give them war. If they want peace, we'll accept it. But on our terms, not theirs. Song nodded slowly. I'll deliver the message. 3 days later, Song stood in the Galactic Council chamber once again. It looked different now. Half the seats were empty. Many species had pulled their representatives back home, afraid of what humanity might do next. The ones who remained looked nervous. High Chancellor Vorman sat in his elevated seat, his scales looking dull. He'd aged visibly in the past few weeks. Ambassador Song, he said, you have requested to address the Council. I have terms for peace, Song said. He pulled out a datapad and began reading. As he went through each point, he watched the Council's reactions. Some looked angry. Some looked resigned. Ambassador Kreltoth looked like he wanted to protest but was too afraid. When Song finished, the chamber was silent. These terms are harsh, Foreman said finally. So was murdering 300 children in a school, Song replied. So was enslaving 30,000 people. You're getting off easy. We could have kept fighting. We could have done to you what you tried to do to us. Instead, we're offering peace. It's not peace, it's surrender, someone shouted from the upper galleries. No, Song said. Surrender is what the Vex did when they realized we could end their civilization in a week. This is an offer. Take it or leave it. But know this. If you leave it, if you refuse these terms, then humanity will interpret that as a declaration that you're still our enemy. You're threatening the entire Council? Kreltoth asked. I'm stating facts. We tried to warn you. You laughed. We tried to follow your laws. You ignored us. We tried to protect our people. You killed them. Now you'll live by our rules or we'll show you what humanity does to its enemies. Song paused, looking around the chamber. We don't want to conquer you. We don't want your worlds or your resources. We just want to be left alone. Give us that, give us justice for our dead, and this war ends. Refuse, and it continues. Foreman looked at the other council members. Some were whispering to each other. Some sat in silence. Finally he spoke. The council will need time to consider. You have 24 hours, Song interrupted. After that our fleets start moving again. And this time we won't stop with the Vex. Song turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind him the council erupted in argument. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to surrender. All of them were afraid. In human space, Admiral Han received Song's report and smiled grimly. 24 hours, she told her officers. The Galactic Council chamber was full for the first time in weeks. Every species had sent representatives. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when the 24 hours ended. High Chancellor Vorman stood at his podium, looking older and more tired than anyone had ever seen him. Behind him, his staff had prepared documents, treaties, agreements, surrender terms. The Council has deliberated, he said, his voice carrying through the chamber. We have reviewed humanity's terms for peace. After careful consideration and debate, we accept them. All of them. Unconditionally. The chamber erupted. Some species shouted in protest. Others sat in stunned silence. Ambassador Kreltoth stood up, his mandibles clicking furiously. "This is outrageous," he shouted. "We're giving them everything they ask for? We're letting them dictate terms to the entire council?" "Sit down, Ambassador," Foreman said quietly. "I will not. Sit down." Foreman's voice was cold now. "Or would you prefer to explain to your people why you want to continue a war that has already destroyed the Vex Collective? A war that could destroy us all?" Kreltoth slowly sat down. Foreman continued. "Humanity has proven they can defeat us militarily. They have weapons we didn't know existed, tactics we can't counter, and most importantly, they have something we forgot we needed." He paused. "They have the will to use them. So we surrender?" Someone asked. "Just like that?" "We accept peace," Foreman corrected. "There's a difference. We pay reparations for the lives lost. We hand over war criminals for trial. We give humanity a permanent seat with veto power. And in exchange, they stop destroying our military forces. What's to stop them from demanding more later?" Another voice asked. This time a new voice answered. Ambassador Song Junho had entered the chamber, flanked by Captain Lee Hyun and Dr. Park Minji. They walked to the center platform. "Nothing stops us," Song said clearly, "except our own choice. We could demand more. We could conquer you. We could do to you what you tried to do to us, but we won't. Do you know why?" The chamber was silent. "Because we remember what it's like to be conquerors. We remember empire building and colonial expansion and treating other people as resources to exploit. We did it to ourselves for thousands of years. And we learned that conquest is easy. Living with what you've conquered is the hard part." Song pulled up images on the main display. Human history. Wars and weapons and devastation. Then images of hospitals and schools and people helping each other rebuild. "We're not accepting your surrender because we're weak," Song continued. "We're accepting it because we're strong enough to show mercy. The Vex murdered our civilians. You helped them, and we could end your civilizations for it. But instead we're offering you peace. Real peace. Not the false peace you had before, where you ignored the weak and rewarded the strong. A peace built on justice and respect." Lee Hyun stepped forward. 3 weeks ago I stood in this chamber and warned you. I told you that humans have a history, that we know what happens when people are pushed too far. You laughed at me." He looked around at the assembled aliens. "You're not laughing now. And that's good, because it means you're finally listening. We're not your enemies unless you make us your enemies. We're not interested in ruling you. We just want to live in peace and protect our people." Park Minji added, "But understand this. If anyone threatens human civilians again, if anyone tries to enslave our people or destroy our colonies, we will respond the same way. Completely. Overwhelmingly. Without mercy. We've shown you what we're capable of. Don't make us show you again." Foreman nodded slowly. "The council accepts these terms. The treaty will be signed immediately. Reparations will begin within the month. War crimes trials will be scheduled, and humanity will take its seat on the Security Committee." Within hours, the treaties were signed. The Vex Collective agreed to pay massive reparations and surrender all military personnel involved in the attacks. The Korthans, Talarians, and Rigelians did the same, their involvement now public knowledge. But something unexpected happened. As the news spread across the galaxy, other species began coming forward. Minor civilizations that had been ignored by the Council, weaker species that had suffered abuse from stronger neighbors. They came to human embassies asking for help. President Kang Min-seo received dozens of requests. Some wanted military protection. Some wanted advocacy in the Council. All of them wanted what humans had won: respect and justice. Kang called a meeting with her military commanders and diplomatic staff. Admiral Han, Colonel Kim, Ambassador Song, and Commander Oh all attended. "We have a decision to make," Kang said. "Do we help these other species? Or do we focus on ourselves? If we help everyone, we'll be spread too thin," Colonel Kim argued. "We need to rebuild our own colonies first." "But if we don't help them, we're no better than the Council," Park Minji countered. "We'll be ignoring the weak and only protecting ourselves." Admiral Han spoke up. "What if we create something new? Not a military force for conquest. A peacekeeping force, to protect civilians and prevent what happened to us from happening to anyone else." Kang nodded slowly. "The Terran Guard. a volunteer force drawn from all branches of our military. Their mission: protect civilians, prevent war crimes, and maintain peace. The council won't like it, Song said. They'll see it as us expanding our power. Let them, Kang replied. We didn't ask for this role, but someone needs to do it. For centuries, the council has been reactive. They wait until after atrocities happen, then issue statements of concern. We'll be proactive. We'll stop them before they happen. The Terran Guard was established 3 months later. 5,000 soldiers and support staff, equipped with the best ships and weapons humanity could provide. Their rules of engagement were simple: protect civilians, any civilians, regardless of species. Prevent war crimes. Use force only as necessary. Their first deployment was to a border dispute between 2 minor species. The stronger one had been raiding colonies of the weaker one, taking resources and slaves. When the Terran Guard arrived, they simply positioned themselves between the 2 sides. Leave the colonies alone, the Guard commander told the raiders. Take what you need from uninhabited worlds. Leave the people alone. The raiders didn't believe them at first. They tried to push past. The Guard disabled 3 raider ships without firing a single lethal shot. The message was clear: we're here to protect, but we will fight if necessary. The raid stopped. Over the next year, the Terran Guard responded to 17 similar situations. Sometimes their presence was enough. Sometimes they had to fight. But always they protected the weak from the strong. The galaxy began to change. Species that had been ignored for centuries suddenly had advocates. Bullies found themselves facing consequences. The Galactic Council, seeing the shift in power, began reforming its own practices. Vorman stepped down as High Chancellor, replaced by a coalition government that included representatives from smaller species. New laws were passed protecting civilian populations. War crimes were now prosecuted by an independent court that humans had helped establish. Li Hyun and Park Minji returned to the council as permanent representatives. This time, when they spoke, everyone listened. We need to establish the Terran protocols, Li announced at a council session 1 year after the war ended. Universal laws protecting all sentient civilians in conflicts. No targeting of non-combatants. No slavery. No collective punishment. And any violations will be met with immediate intervention. The protocols passed with only 3 dissenting votes, but the biggest change came in how species viewed humanity. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with respect, and something else. Hope. A young alien, a member of a species that had been rescued by the Terran Guard, asked her parent a question one day. Why do they call it the old galactic rule? The child asked. The one about never angering humans? Her parent, who had lived through the war, thought carefully before answering. Because people used to think humans were dangerous because they were cruel. That if you angered them, they would destroy you out of malice. But that's not true, is it? No, the real rule, the one we learned, is different. Never anger humans because they understand violence better than anyone. They know what it does, what it costs. They've lived through it, studied it, and chosen to rise above it. That's what makes them dangerous. Not cruelty, but understanding. So they're good? They try to be. And that trying, that constant effort to be better than their history tells them they could be, that's what changed the galaxy. 50 years after the war, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The old power structures had crumbled. New alliances formed based on mutual respect rather than strength. The Terran Guard had expanded to include volunteers from dozens of species, all dedicated to protecting the weak. The Vex Collective still existed, but they were different. Humbled, reformed. Human administrators had helped them rebuild, showing them better ways to extract resources without destroying worlds. Some Vex even joined the Terran Guard, eager to prove they could be better than they had been. Ambassador Song Junho, now an old man, stood in the council chamber one last time before retirement. Around him sat representatives from 100 species, all working together. When we first came here, he said, we were dismissed as emotional and weak. We tried to play by your rules and we were punished for it.